Hey everybody, welcome back to Video Game Esoteric and a continuing series, Sega Racing Renaissance, where I review every single 3D arcade racing game Sega ever developed in a retrospective fashion. Today we're taking a look at Indy 500, which is basically the companion game, in my opinion, to Daytona USA on the Model 2. And the development of this game is a really fun story that I will get into in a moment, but to start off, this was supposed to be a Model 3 game, and it was downported to Model 2 due to timing. Before we get too far involved though, do me a huge favor, go down below, hit like and subscribe, that notification bell definitely helps us out. And if you feel so inclined and want to support the channel, we got a Patreon link down below as well. But just like Daytona USA, the first track is an oval and you have a rolling start. Indy 500 wears its inspiration on its sleeve, and it was developed by Sega AM1, and obviously every team at Sega knows what every other team is doing, and Daytona was such a hit, it's not surprising that a year later a game like this came out. Now the handling is completely different. It is not Daytona in feel, but in some aspects it's Daytona in look. And in a moment I will show you the games running side by side so you'll better understand if you're not familiar with Daytona. But is this game a good racing game even if it reminds me of Daytona? Of course it is, because if any game makes you think about Daytona Racing on the Sega Model 2, you know it's going to be a good game. It is probably one of the best racing games ever made. But like I said, this game definitely is inspired by Daytona, so let's go ahead on a side-by-side view of both games, and you will see here just how similar they are. Obviously Indy 500 on the left and Daytona USA on the right. Both are ovals. The graphics look very similar. It is the same first track basically, just in a different format. And it's not surprising that Sega would do something like this because arcade racing games were hot in the mid-90s, and Daytona USA was such a hit for Sega. They were trying to replicate their success without having to make a Daytona 2 quite yet. Moving back over to Indy 500 though, like I said, they might look the same, but you have to play them to understand the differences, because obviously a NASCAR style stock car and an Indy 500 car are completely different machines. Sure, they have engines and four wheels, but that's kind of where the similarities start and end, because the handling in this game is just completely different, and in some ways I actually prefer it to Daytona because the tightness of these cars is spectacular. But you do get 3 tracks like any Sega racing game should, so let's move over into another track and check out what's going on. And I do love even this little flag that goes by, ladies and gentlemen, start your engines. It's just a static image, but it has a lot of flair to it. And the second and third track in this game are great as well. All of the twists and turns and the hairpins, they really keep you on your toes, because you have to race a clean line if you want to see the end of this game, and especially if you want to get in any sort of podium position. The cars at the start are pretty slow, but once you get into the middle of the pack, and the AI becomes very aggressive. They love to bump you, they love to get in your way, and they love to screw with you in any manner possible. But you'll see there a really good turn. You keep your speed through the apex and you pop back out, and it feels incredible, because obviously Sega was at the top of their game when they were making something like this in arcades. They had all the experience with Daytona under their belt and other projects they'd done, so Sega always knew how to have good handling in their games, outside of one that I've either already showed you or I will talk about soon that I absolutely hate. Spoiler alert there if I haven't showed you yet. But I love the cockpit view as well. You have the wheel that turns in real time. Model 2 hardware was very powerful, but this was actually supposed to be a Model 3 game. But the Model 3 hardware was delayed, so as opposed to delaying this game alongside of it, Sega decided to release it on the Model 2 so they had another game out in arcades. And a lot of times with these cabinets, you could change out some of the games in them because they all had the same mechanics. But it would be super interesting to see this game running on the Model 3 hardware, but unfortunately a ROM's never been found, so it just doesn't exist. But go ahead and listen to the soundtrack and the engine noises for like 45 seconds that are quite good, and I'll come back and talk more about the history of Indy 500. But enjoy these revs. We got 11th place, and that isn't terrible, but this is the type of game that's going to take a lot of practice to actually see first place, because finishing the games with the timer isn't that terribly hard. Sometimes you're going to slip up, make a few mistakes, and not see the checkered flag, but actually getting into the first place position and holding it long enough is going to require an extreme amount of learning the track, because this game requires you to take every single turn perfectly if you want to get into the top first, second, or third spot. But again, I just can't get over, and it's definitely a Model 2 and Model 3 thing, how fast this game moves. The sense of speed, especially going through this city, outside of running into a wall because you're sure to use the brakes, is spectacular. It really does feel like you're flying at the speeds that speedometer is giving you down below there. And I've never driven a car 180 miles an hour, but I assume if I did, everything would be flying by me just like this game is as well. And there's a certain thing about the Model 2 look that holds up really well. This holds up so much better than so many other 3D games of its time, because Model 2 and Model 3 had a certain look to them. It's almost stylized. I don't want to call it cartoonish, but it's got a lot of poppy colors and just enough polygons so everything looks like it's supposed to, that this game feels still today to be a gorgeous looking game, both in stills and in motion. But you'll see there braking around the corner. You're going to have to learn how to brake and when to brake, because that right there is a good turn. I braked, I got the apex, I slingshot back out of it, and everything's great and I'm able to pass a car. Making one single mistake in that corner is going to put you into the wall. You're going to lose all of that momentum. But you'll see there, the AI likes to troll you. They're going to swerve in front of you. They're going to try to block you, just like an actual race car driver would in real life. Now, you get a little bit more leeway in hitting the other cars. If you did that in a real race, you'd probably lose at least one of your tires or flip your car. But you got to be aware to give the AI enough room and to try to maneuver around them, because they are ruthless and they're going to screw with you. But again, there, I took that a little bit too much on the brake, and I did lose some momentum. Not so much to completely screw me over, but enough that it could have been better. And the more you play this game and the more you learn the lines, the more natural it becomes and the better you get at it. Definitely give this some time if you've never played it. You can play it on the Model 2 emulator like I am playing here, because I don't own an original arcade board of this. But good luck finding one of these in the wild. It's been probably 15 years since I've seen an Indy 500 cabinet. But the best thing to do is go back to the original oval track, the one I compared to Daytona, and go into the cockpit view. This is the most fun I have playing this game. Things are just flying by me. You're maneuvering in between the cars, or running right into the back of them in that instance. But the sense of speed and the sense of scale and the sense of wonder you get in the cockpit, this may be the best in-cockpit game Sega ever made. Because normally I don't use the cockpit view outside of showing it to you on videos. I like the spatial awareness of seeing my entire car in 3D, but here it just works. Ripping around this oval, taking those turns, watching the hands of that driver move in real time, seeing the cars at eye level, it just adds to the spectacle and speed of the game and ends up feeling perfect. But you leave me a comment down below. Have you ever played Indy 500? Have you ever heard of it? This is a deeper cut of a Sega arcade racing game. It's not going to be talked about the same way that Daytona is, but that crash right there was amazing, and getting through it felt so special. But if you do see an Indy 500 cabinet out in the wild, definitely throw some quarters in, because they're becoming rarer and rarer. Seeing a Daytona cabinet still pretty easy, about as easy as finding a House of the Dead cabinet. But things like this, Indy 500, they weren't as successful as Daytona were, so there's a situation in which all of these cabinets have kind of left the arcade floor, and a lot of them have been recycled, sadly. But if you know of a cabinet for sale in Chicago and you want to drive it by my house and sell it to me for cheap, I am a buyer. Short of that, that's Indy 500. We'll have another racing video next week and videos throughout the week as well. But I will see you guys next time. Bye-bye.